What is the scariest paranormal experience you have had or heard from someone you believe wouldn't lie? One night when I was maybe 10-12 I had trouble falling asleep. My bedroom was the entire top floor of our house with my bed and such being on the left side and storage closets and a play area being on the right. I was lying in bed when I heard a noise from the other side of the room and see a rocking horse begin to rock. It was sitting just outside one of the storage closet doors. It proceeded to rock its way halfway across the room and stopped dead under the ceiling light. At this point I was freaking out and just buried my head under blankets and never peeked out again until morning. It was all confirmed to not be a dream as a rocking horse was still in the middle of my room when I woke up. Furthermore, I got a stern reprimand from my parents for being up out of bed playing with my toys well past my bedtime. Their bedroom was directly below the storage closet play area and had heard the creaking of the rocking horse shuffling across the room. This is currently why I hate all old-fashioned toys and dolls, sticking with a PSP or handheld for my kids when or if I have them. My grandfather told me this story about how one time he was sitting in a chair in front of the house when he heard his wife repeatedly calling him from inside the house. The thing is, my grandmother passed away a few years before that, but he told me that the voice was so pressing that he actually got up to look inside the house. And as soon as he got inside he heard a loud crash behind him and turned around to see that the chair he has been sitting in moments ago had been crushed by the cast iron gutter that fell on it. If he didn't came inside the house he would have probably been seriously injured. I don't know if it's paranormal or not, but every time I think about it it sends chills down my spine. So I was in the 5th or 6th grade hanging out with a friend at his parents' new house at the just finished building. We are in his family attached 3-car garage looking through boxes from his room in his old house, though I can't recall what we were looking for when he turns to me and says, "Want to see something crazy?" He goes and takes a tennis ball from one of those clear tubes they come in and proceeds to give it a couple tries before successfully throwing it through the crawl space door that leads to a storage space above the garage we are in. I clearly hear it bounce around and stop. I don't think anything about it and we continue looking through the boxes in his garage. We are talking to each other when all of a sudden a tennis ball comes frickin' flying through the air and smacks the back wall of the garage right between us as we are standing over a box. We both bolted from his garage and went to his room on the other end of the house. He later explained to me that at their old house, located across the street from the recently built new house we're in, had a ghost in the attic that liked to move things around, as in keep things tidy. He said in the past that you could hear the boxes being slowly slid on the floor, ceiling above you, or that you would place something in one place and check on it later and it was in a completely different place in the attic. He believed that the ghost followed them to their new home. All I know is the tennis ball experience freaked the heck out of me and I refuse to ever go back into their garage. Some facts. He was the youngest of 2 siblings and his older brother was away at college. His dad was at work and his mom had left us alone to go to the store. There was no one else at his house. Even if there was someone in that crawl space above their garage you would have easily heard them walking around. Oh man, I'd love to have a tidying ghost as a roommate. I haven't told this to anyone yet. This happened maybe 2 years ago. I was asleep taking a nap in the living room when I woke up to my dad saying watch out for your mom. So I got up, went to look for my mom and found her passed out in the bathroom. She had really high blood pressure, to the point where internal organs were in danger. We could get help fast enough, so things could be settled with medications only. If my dad wouldn't have waken me up, things could have ended worse. He died 5 years prior to that event from leukemia. It was like 2 AM. I took my clothes off and went to sleep. A minute later something hit me at my head. It was one of my socks. When I take them off I throw them in a corner of my room, so someone threw it back at me, but there was no one in my room. Was alone 100%. May not sound so scary, but it was for me. That is actually really scary. According to my mother, my sister once went to her afraid of someone in her room, then gave a good physical description of my mother's father, who'd been dead long before either of us were born. My sister had no reason to know what he looked like, not just because he was long dead, but because he was never in any of our family photos, because my mother hated him, because he was a pedophile. My dad once told me a story about one of his cousins. The cousin used to live with his family, wife and daughter, in an apartment building. On the floor above them, lived an old widowed woman whose young son, around 24-25, served in the Indian Army and had died during a bomb attack somewhere in North India. A few weeks after the funeral, my uncle started having dreams about the son who had died. He would tell my dad and his mom that the son keeps knocking on his door in the dream and just stands there once the door is opened. He had the same dream for 2 weeks straight until one night before dinner. He opened his front door to go down to the lobby and saw the son standing in front of him. He quickly shut the door, freaked out for a few minutes behind the door and opened it again to find the son still standing there. I'm not sure what happened right after, but my uncle then started seeing the son inside his apartment, and then it just stopped. He didn't see the son anymore. Maybe it actually happened or it was the psychological aftermath of overthinking about a death. It creeped me out regardless. My nephew lives with me in an old farmhouse built in the 1840s. When he was about 4, maybe 5, he told me that there was a little boy named Charlie who lived in our house. He said Charlie had never heard of video games and that Charlie's dad left him home all by himself. This was around the same time that he had an imaginary friend named Mr. Cat, who was an anthropomorphic cat, so I wrote it off. A couple weeks later I was shaving with the bathroom door open and thought I could see my nephew kind of looking in at me out of the corner of my eye. I stuck my head around and could see him from behind messing with an old china cabinet we keep important stuff in, and just as I walked into the room I could see my nephew sitting in the living room watching TV. He couldn't have crossed that much distance that fast or silently. I asked him about it and he said, oh yeah, that was Charlie. He says there's a really super book in there from when you were a little boy, and at the bottom of a stack of old documents and stuff in the china cabinet is a book I got as a gift when I was a kid. I didn't even know it was there. It was under 2 boxes of documents and couldn't be seen until the boxes were lifted out. The little boy didn't look like you think of ghosts. He wasn't transparent. He didn't float. He didn't look spooky. He just looked like a kid. Now I'm convinced that people see ghosts, or whatever they are, every day and don't realize it because they look just as real as we do. When I was 17, I went to my mate's house for some beers for his birthday. I probably only had about 5 drinks. Come the early hours of the morning, probably around 2-3 am, I head out to the kitchen for a drink. I pour a drink of water and turn around and take a sip, and as I'm swallowing I swear I hear footsteps. The ground in the entire room is all made up of tiles, so I hold my drink down and listen for a few seconds. Next thing I know, I hear fast footsteps in front of me running towards me, and suddenly a huge cold breeze blew right through me. At that point, I just freaked out and ran back for the bedroom. I ended up waking my friend up and telling him what happened, and we listened and could hear odd bangs and bumps from out there, but nothing out of the ordinary after that ever happened. I'll still always remember it though. Gives me goosebumps writing this. It's inside you now, just biding its time. Good luck with that. My mom and I lived with my grandma at her house for a while, after my grandpa passed away from the effects of a major stroke. At 14 years old, I woke up really early on the Christmas day after he'd passed. It was barely light outside. Under the tree, among the wrapped presents, while still half awake I could make out a new winter coat and hat laid out for me by mom. Then someone standing halfway in the doorway leading from the living room to the hall said to me, go back to bed. It's too early. Instead of going through the doorway, I took an alternate route upstairs to my room. All other bedroom doors were closed. Later in the morning, when everyone was up and about, my grandma said her alarm clock radio went off. She hadn't said that thing in forever. She only used it for the clock. During breakfast, I told the above story to mom and grandma. Mom then looked at grandma with wide eyes. All they could both say was, well, it wasn't me. I was still asleep. Not scary, but it's all I have. This one isn't necessarily scary, but definitely paranormal. I was 14 and sitting by myself in my living room playing some Halo, when I noticed that the room around me seemed oddly quiet. I paused the game and tried to listen for the difference. It was strange. My house is over 100 years old and usually there's an odd creak audible from somewhere nearby. Not now though. It was dead quiet. I felt strange, but not threatened. There was nothing sinister about the silence. I sat for a few more minutes just listening. It almost felt peaceful actually. Then suddenly I felt a hand on my shoulder. Very lightly and briefly. but even today I still remember the distinct feeling of a hand on my shoulder. It didn't scare me, nor did I jump up in surprise. I actually felt a familiar presence, like family. I mentioned the experience to my mom, and she told me she'd experienced the same thing, only one room over. She says she felt her father's presence with the hand. Pretty cool. TLDR. Ghost of my grandfather watched me play some Halo. TLDR. Ghost of my grandfather watched me play some Halo. He just wanted you to annihilate the noobs. Before I was born, my father and mother had a small apartment together. My mother told me once she went in the basement and saw a woman standing at the base of the steps just staring up at her, and then she just vanished. Then my father was in the shower, one with a sliding glass door that you can barely make out what's on the other side, when a large figure walked up to the other side of the glass and banged on it, making it blow out. My mother found him in the fetal position in the shower covered in glass and no one was around. That last one made them move out. He confirmed it happened but doesn't like to talk about it. He's a relatively tough dude, so for something to scare him that much means a lot. Somewhere in between those two occurrences, they came home to find absolutely everything moved over about an inch. They realized this cause they're not very good at dusting. Not scary, just funny. My family sails on the Great Lakes. A local author wrote 2 books, called Haunted Lakes I and II. The second book came out when I was 10 or 12. It detailed a spooky story of a cloudy day where a local guide was leading one visitor through an island lighthouse. It was a cloudy, crappy day. The visitor stopped and asked the guide whether he had his kids with him on the island. Guide says no, and as far as he knows, there's no kids on the island. Visitor is puzzled, since he can hear distant cries of mutter, mother, and kids playing. Author of book assumes haunted, because many of the old keepers were from Germany. But I've always had a strong suspicion those two just heard my brother and I, probably about 4 and 6. At the time, my family tended to go out to islands on our sailboat even when the weather wasn't great, and we would play outside as long as it wasn't pouring rain or storming. We also grew up speaking German, since my mom taught German at a school, and we were quite loud. Finally, we had a small craft, and knew all the anchorages. If we had been on the island, no one might have seen us. So I think I got written into a book as a ghost. My friend's dad is an ex-marine. He has been a paramedic, firefighter, and security guard, so there's practically nothing on earth that can frighten this mother. His family used to live in a very old house built in the 1800s. One day my friend's dad was home alone waiting for the rest of the family to get back with dinner. Now this man is the most honest man I have ever met. There would be no reason to lie about this. He was sitting on the couch downstairs when he says he heard footsteps coming from upstairs. He walks down the main hallway and looks up to their balcony banister for the upstairs hallway. He then said that there was a shadowy figure that glided across the upstairs railing, from one side to the other, until it was out of view. Right after he saw the supposed apparition, he heard the loudest, most blood-curdling scream he ever heard in his life. Immediately after this scream, all of the lights in the house went out and he found himself standing in the pitch black. He then ran out to the front porch and waited for the rest of the family to return. My buddy said that when they got back he remembers the horrified look on his dad's face. He said he had never seen that look on him and has never seen it since. 2 weeks later they were moved out of the house and moved closer to where I live, which is how we became friends. While this story still gives me the creeps, I can't be too upset because I got my best friend out of the ordeal. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.